Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Senate breaks filibuster, not so fast. Reverse migration surge. We'll talk about that. Watch, Hot Mike catches Joe Biden. Well, I guess they're treating him like a toddler now. BBC folks end up getting fired for their manipulative lies. Trump proposed introducing 50-year mortgages. Are you kidding me right now? President Trump, big pardons. We'll tell you about one key pardon as well. U.S. Army, I guess they got an ammunition plant, and their ammunition plant's involved in all kinds of crimes. U.S. intelligence reveals Israelis aren't who you think they are. Oh, boy, it's getting crazy fast, right? Electric bills have been rising. We'll talk about it all. You're watching and listening to Liberty RoundTable Live. Without further ado, the goal is to promote God, family, and country, and to protect life, liberty, and property, and to do so on your TV and radio in the traditions of our founding fathers. As you know, we reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. We pray you had a weekend full of God, family, and country. That's for sure. I know I did. Dr. Bradley, welcome to the broadcast. Hope you did as well, sir.
Much and yes, indeed. So, it's always nice to be back in the saddle again on Monday, trying to promote the concept as widely as we can about liberty and so on. But I did have a number of events that, we spoke and tried to promote things. Spoke specifically over the weekend about the Third and Fourth Amendments, which is some treasures of truth that we need to relearn in today's world. We've basically eviscerated and lost the Third and Fourth Amendments, even though we don't have troops physically, positioned in our homes. They've got access all the time, baby. No, they've got access all the time. Why do they need to put bodies in there to be able to ascertain all the intel that they put the British troops in homes for before? I mean, they can do that any moment, any time. Anytime you're on your phone, you're talking to your Siri or Alexa or whatever the heck those silly technologies are.
Yeah, they're recording you 24/7, buddy. They won't listen though. They promise.
I know. But it all is. It's all effectuated through stuff like the USA Patriot Act that has basically eliminated the Fourth Amendment. Anyway, yeah, there's things to talk about, and most Americans don't have a clue. They're worried more about when the Super Bowl is going to be or whatever's coming up here.
Well, I'm worried about my SNAP benefits, buddy. That's what I'm worried about. And I'm worried about travel. I got to go see the football game in Florida, and I got to do this and that. And you're interrupting my life there. And anyway, Senate supposedly breaks filibuster to end government shutdown. Now, here's the problem. They voted last night in what they call a test procedural vote. That's all they did. Everybody's saying, hey, they got it solved. Not so fast. The question becomes the test vote last night, whatever language was in there for the Senate to test vote. And then when they do the final vote coming up, will they twist arms? Will it be different? Then when they get it to the House, will it be different? Yes. And then it's got to pass the House and the Senate and go to the president too, right? We got a ways to go here. They say when all the procedural details are done, we'll be in good shape, but that might take several days. Number one, flights are being canceled left and right. What do you think we're going to end up with compared to what they're touting now, Doctor?
I think it's going to be very similar, but you're absolutely right. It ain't done until whatever lady sings at the end. I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
But, no, really, I watched the procedural vote last night.
Yeah.
And it was a very rare Sunday session that they did.
Yeah, I think they should have taken off Sunday personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, but the point of the matter is all of these other steps have got to occur, and there's some rancor that's starting to build, particularly on the House side, I think, by the Democrats. They thought they got sold out because I've looked at the deal, if you will, and they got nothing. They got nothing that they pulled this whole stunt out for. I mean, yeah, they passed a year-long budget for a few items, and so they got snapped.
But the rest crashes January 31st, right?
Well, correct. But here's the deal. Let's just talk about some really simple logistical kind of thing. When it all gets done and the Senate's done all of their blessing of this and that and the other, and it's going over to the House, well, Mike Johnson needs to reconstitute the House, and They've got some procedural things that have got to go in there. But here's part of the problem. They got to get everybody flown out to Washington, D.C. Our representatives from the state of Utah, they're not going to drive. So they got to go on the
They
crippled
better drive
airplane.
because flights are getting canceled left and right. They should have never left like I told them. Why leave in the first place? You should have been doing the people's business this whole time, Mike Johnson.
Well, that absolutely right. They shouldn't have.
We shouldn't even be
shut it
debating the air
down.
traffic controllers. That should have been passed as a, hey, we're above partisan politics. We're going to get the transportation system of the United States rolling. But both sides deserve a lot of blame here, Doctor. And I know what they want to do is they want to hand one or the other party the blame for this, and the rest, go scot-free. I don't support that. Both of them, both sides have been treating parties greater than the American people and greater than the oath of office that they took, and it needs to stop. I'm holding both parties responsible and saying, you clowns have created a disaster, cost us billions of dollars, and now you act like you've got a win on the table? I don't really see it as a win in any way, shape, or form. Everybody had to give to make it happen. Now they're going to kick the can down the road. We're going to be dealing with the same thing in January. You would think they'd take the next 3 months to kind of prepare and solve the problem, but they won't. They'll blow it off until January 28th. Then they'll be like, oh my gosh, we got to get serious. We got to pull an all-nighter, baby. This is great. We got to serve the people. I've been working all night for you people. And they're just lying through their teeth, pretending they're delivering. The fact is, it's a clown show. And I know people are saying, Sam, that's not fair, but come on, they work hard. And, I don't think so. I think it's a clown show. The idea that they have to get back in Washington to go to work and they won't drive, and we've been paying them the whole time. Hey, if I can't take a flight somewhere and I need to be there, I drive, Doctor. That's what I do. I go there.
Well,
and they need to do the same thing. They're telling me they're so cuddled they can't drive 20 hours to get there, but they can take a 3-hour flight, 5-hour flight, whatever it be, and they don't have the time. Well, if you're working for me and you're on the payroll, then you need to, they should have left last night, right?
Well, all of these things are correctives that should have never had to have happened because it shouldn't have happened to begin with. They should have done their jobs. They had, basically 9 months to get a budget ready, and they didn't do it. But logistically, right now, these are the excuses you're going to hear. And what's going to happen in the House? Now, the Democrats, if the Republicans stay, firm in their party lane, the Democrats won't be able to stop the approval in the House. But there's going to be a lot of rancor. Now, what's going to happen is the spin doctors will come into it, and you'll hear. Now, by the way, the American public, largely based upon the election that happened the first week in November, the public largely blamed the Republicans. And so there'll be spin doctors on the Republican side, spin doctors on the Democrat side.
That's because you didn't stay in the House and pass legislation over and over showing who the people are who are shutting this down for reals, and you didn't basically do things that could have been common sense. I'm confident if you put a single bill up that was to fund the air traffic controllers, you would have got it passed. Even if it failed a time or two, with the pressure you could have put on people with a single item bill. All we're talking about is getting the air traffic controllers back so that people can, fly around for Thanksgiving and normal transportation for goods and services, UPS, FedEx, all the different things we rely on air travel for could be solved. I'm confident if you pushed on that and put it through once or twice or 3 times, you could have pushed hard enough and got that done with the backing of the American people if they had tried, but they didn't. So it's a failure. I'm convinced they could have got that done, Doctor. I really think so. Not because the parties wanted to get along, but because I think you could have put so much common sense pressure.
The air traffic control you're very focused on, but I got to tell you, if you're a military family and you've got a spouse that's overseas deployed unconstitutionally to something they shouldn't be in on to begin with, or you're trying to live off base without being paid, those guys are every bit as tight.
They are.
And there's the clerks and there's the staff of the House.
But all that's an irrelevant discussion. Not because those people don't need to be funded as well, but because we're talking about a single bill. Will you fund the air traffic controllers? Yes or no? Straight up and down vote. Let's own it. Yeah, military people, we're getting to you too soon. But we've got to start somewhere. It's a tiny bill. It's easy to understand. And even if an on-duty military man wanted to come home to see his family for Thanksgiving, if he got some leave or hey, the air traffic controllers would allow him to come home too. So this benefits everybody equally. There's no partisan politics in it.
Well,
And that's the only reason I choose that one. If somebody else can find a bill just as simple, just as clean, just as nonpartisan, I'd go for that too. This is just my example.
yeah, there's a whole plethora of screw ups, and it started as soon as they were sworn in the first week in January, and so yeah, there's enough blame to go around, but the American public blamed the Republicans largely. They
They did.
spanked
That's right.
they got
That's
spanked
right.
by the Democrats.
Sad but
So
true. I think it was some liberal states that, were really up for grabs too. That kind of made it seem
Sure.
bigger than it was, but your point's well taken. Like I say, even if they end this filibuster, and I pray they do, I blame both parties because I think they had ways forward that they didn't even consider. I will say this, we got reverse migration surge. We'll tell you about it in seconds. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live. Last Friday, Dr. Bradley and I had a big discussion about immigration. And for the most part, we agreed. We agreed to disagree on a couple of, in my opinion, points. But for the most part, we agree that, hey, we cannot let our nation be balkanized or taken over by illegals who bring their culture and their language and just destroy the country. We can only assimilate so many people, and we've already got immigration plans that bring in 1 million a year. And Dr. Bradley's saying, hey, he believes that the legal parameters that we've got now are great. We've got to slam the illegal door. But the current situation is good if we just follow the law. And that was Dr. Bradley's point is, look, we just got to start following the laws, Sam. And I agree 100%. I went a little further and said, I also think we need to work on a justice and mercy plan to separate the criminals from the people who may be here for different reasons. And so we need to kind of update our immigration plan. But Dr. Bradley has a valid point. Whenever we tamper with anything, it seems to get jacked down and worse. I mean, I don't disagree with him on that either. Anyway, we had a great conversation for everybody to think about. The goal isn't for one person to win or be right and the other one to be wrong. It's really for us to discuss these ideas, to come up with answers and solutions that make sense. That's really our goal, is solutions. Dr. Bradley, before I go on, if I fairly stated that, I want to give you a chance to, I don't mean to speak for you. I'm just trying to summarize. Was that a fair summary?
Well, I think you were kinder to me than you should have been, because I've got a lot more to say about that if you want me to. Because honestly, there's a bigger chasm, I think, than a lot of people believe, and I think
So let's do this headline, and then we can talk about your chasm and stuff like that. The headline says reverse migration surges as U.S. crackdown sends thousands back south. Basically, they talk about in Panama. They say a striking new migration trend is unfolding. Thousands of migrants, mostly Venezuelans right now, are heading away from the United States, ladies and gentlemen. Tough immigration measures, reinstated under the Trump administration, have triggered a, quote, reverse flow of people returning through Central America. Between January and September 2025, over 18,000 migrants, they say, traveled from Panama back to Colombia, while crossings through the dangerous, the Darien Gap, plunged by 98%. U.S. border arrivals have dropped sharply, they say, as deportations have risen significantly, nearly 50% year over year. By mid-2025, deportation flights. So Joe Biden flew everybody into the country to get handouts. Donald Trump is flying people out. So by the mid-2025, deportation flights is what they're called, from the U.S. to Mexico ramped up from weekly to daily. Many deportees, they say, are struggling to deal with this and da-da-da-da. But the bottom line is we're seeing a significant change, and we're starting to see border economies that once thrived under migration now are melting down. They say in, I don't know how you say this, Tapachula, Mexico, they say daily crossings have fallen from, over 1,000 to fewer to 50, and it's devastating the economies there. I think this is great news. I'm grateful that President Trump is doing his very best to lock down the border, despite all the opposition that he gets. I agree with Dr. Bradley that this illegal immigration is a disaster for America because people aren't willing to come and become Americans and assimilate. They're coming for handouts or they're coming for criminal reasons. My only point is, how do you separate that out from those who want a better life? That out, and the answer Dr. Bradley would give, and he's right, is, hey, we've already got a legal way for people to come. You can already come and push for asylum if it's justifiable, and we can adjudicate your case. We've just got to follow the law. Anyway, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because we talked about it in detail on Friday, and then now there's a big article about it, basically highlighting the progress the Trump administration and Tom Homan and company have accomplished. And I think it's good news because I believe that we cannot be overrun. We both agree on that fact. So our disagreements are slight. Our agreements are, for the most part, there. I just feel like at some point, I would want a better life. At some point, I would want to move to where there's freedom. And I agree there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. I just think that the right way oftentimes is very difficult and expensive for people, and that's kind of the problem. And some would say, well, that's an appropriate deterrent. Maybe so. At the same time, I just know if I lived in one of these foreign nations and I could, have an opportunity for freedom, I would love to take that opportunity. How do we reward those people who have good hearts, who want to live a better life, who are willing to work hard, but reject the criminal element? And, that's what I believe we don't have in place, at least in my mind, well enough yet, that we need to work on. Anyway, Doctor, that's an interesting addition to our discussion, sir.
Well, it is, and I didn't get to a point that I should have made. Sometimes, first of all, let me say this, Sam, before I get too distracted. I wonder sometimes if some of these news sources are not listening to the radio program or some of the things that
I think they are.
And they write articles right after it. I used to hear Rush Limbaugh talk the next day on some of my presentations. I mean, it's
and it's so beyond coincidence too. I've seen it so many times where I just cannot believe there's nothing to it.
Exactly.
Very interesting, and so I hope whether we get the limelight, whether we get the credit or not, I don't care. The fact is, hopefully, our conversations make it into the mainstream for common sense solutions. That's really what we're after, Doctor.
Exactly. Now, just getting back for a moment, and I don't know if we want to thrash this. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sam.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. So let's say it's February 8th, 2026.
Okay.
That's a Sunday. Super Bowl Sunday, by the way. I know it's not on your calendar. It's not on mine, but I've heard that date. And so you go off to church, and, I it's been a long time since I've been in your home, but, you had a lot of kids, you and your wife and the kids, you provided shelter and home and everything like that for them. You probably got a fairly decent food storage and a refrigerator that's good and everything like that. Anyway, you and your wife and kids go off to
freezer
church.
Full of meat. Yeah, we got the whole bit, buddy.
You guys are thinking ahead. And so anyway, you come home from church, and by golly, there's 6 new adults and a bunch of little kids running around your house. You're saying, what the heck? You come in, and somebody in the kitchen making, nachos and dip and everything like that, and they're making tortillas, and there's a guy in your studio that's doing a commercial for Cinco de Mayo thing that's coming up, and your TV's on. I'll bet it's not usually on Super Bowl, but it's on, and they're watching the pregame stuff and everything like that. You say, what's going on? What's going on here?
Yeah, they're watching their Puerto Rican, buddy. I'm with you.
So here's the deal. This is an invasion of your home, and you're going to contact local authorities and say, I need these people out. But here's the reason I had thought of this was that I've had kids that they've had international assignments for years. And one of my daughters had told me about when she was in the Netherlands that this exact scenario happens. Now, South Africa we could use too and stuff like that. But the people that come in actually displace the actual owners, and ultimately and finally they take over the home. And the home is not the individuals anymore. And in this particular case situation I'm thinking of in Netherlands, the actual owners of the home had to leave. So you can see that so easily in a scenario in your hometown with your home being involved. And I don't know there's a lot of difference. And you could say, well, let's get the adults out. Let's leave the kids because, they need some shelter and clothing and all that kind of stuff. But let them go with their parents and a country of origin and all those kind of things. It's one of those things where you say, well, boy, those little kids, they need a place to sleep and stuff like that. Fine. But the fact of the matter is, should Sam Bushman's household get that responsibility, or maybe keep a couple of the good guys, maybe the guy that's in there making the Cinco de Mayo commercial is really a good guy, and he wants to do some things for cultural and all those kind of things. It doesn't matter. It's your home, Sam. And that's kind of what happens with countries when we get people displaced or people coming in, people that are not invited, and you show up at your house and boom, done. This is my house now. So if people think about it in a personalized manner, you can see very quickly that what's happening is not right and shouldn't continue. And we've just got to correct that. And to say, oh, we're going to let all 30 million, let's say, I'll take a low number because it is a low number. Let's do 30 million court cases to decide who should stay and who shouldn't. That would completely smother our judicial system. You couldn't do anything else. And you'd have to have tens of thousands of extra judges, maybe hundreds of thousands, and all the courts and all of the people, all the personnel that have to support court systems and detention centers. I mean, it really would turn out to be a disaster to say everybody gets their day in court. No, go home. That's how Eisenhower handled it in the 50s when he came in and said, look, all you guys that shouldn't be here, go home. And they did. They got on buses and left. And that's what it sounds like. There's some reverse migration things going on, but I don't think it's happening nearly fast enough. And there's people that are holding on with their fingernails and toenails, and they're cementing their feet into the concrete because they're going to stay come whatever. And I think we're at a point now where we've crossed a lot of no returns, and we're going to have a real problem fixing this. Anyway,
we are 100%. And your example is a very good on-point example, 100%. And I agree with your point exactly. The only problem is they're in our house. They're eating our food. They're using our health care. They're having babies free that become anchor citizens. Right? What do we do about it is the only real question left. And sending them home is great. We should send as many home as we can, starting with the criminal element. No question about that. What do we do in the more sticky situations is the only discussions left. And it's very difficult to handle. You're right. We can't have every single case go up to the courts. We'll never manage it. We'll also never manage forcing and hunting them down and forcing them out of the country either. We've got a serious problem. The doctor's right on that score. All right, quick pause, switching subjects in seconds. You are watching and listening to Liberty Roundtable Live, syndicated by lovingliberty.net. Spread the word. Also, check out Dr. Bradley's site, freedomsrisingsun.com. All right, before we go to the subjects I had planned, late breaking news just popped out of the Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen. Kim Davis defending marriage. She's been at it literally for a decade now. She went to the Supreme Court. They call it a long shot case. Sadly, she lost. That's right. Sadly, they shut down Kim Davis. So the headline, Supreme Court rejects Kim Davis's bid to overturn same-sex marriage ruling. It's not surprising, but it's disappointing. There were a few people on the court saying, hey, we got to revisit this. I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, legally and lawfully married. It's God-ordained marriage. I think that same-sex marriage is a perversion of that, and I will not back away from that stance. Nevertheless, you've heard the Supreme Court, and they ruled against Kim Davis. I commend Liberty Counsel for fighting this fight for a decade. If enough other people would have stood up in the fight, we might have changed the tide. But the sad part is, as America doubles down in immorality, we start to lose liberty everywhere. This is the crown jewel of them all, in my humble opinion. You destroy marriage in America, and eventually you destroy the family, Doctor.
Well, you have an absolutely accurate assessment of this, but even if, I mean, if people say, okay, I have a right to contract, I'm going to go say I'm married to somebody else or whatever, based upon that right to contract. The problem is, well, there's a whole bunch of problems, as you well know. But one of the big problems is they keep using a fallacious approach to applying this at a general government level, at the national or federal level, whatever you want to call it, wherein everybody goes to the 14th Amendment and they say, oh, look, we've got this equal protection, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. And as I've said so many times, the 14th Amendment is probably, I don't know, so many.
It's one of the where everyone, or the ones after that, are just as bad. They started to get into these egregious ideas that have put everything on the federal level is what's really happened, right?
What the feds are doing is they're completely supplanting any separation that happened to begin with. The powers, 45th Federalist paper, the powers delegated to the general government are few and defined. And what happens is that by the 14th Amendment, with its poorly conceived concept, is driving everything today. And you know what? There's decisions being made in the Supreme Court that the decision is correct, but the way they got to it is wrong. And they're using the 14th Amendment very often.
Yeah, hold on. And the reason the decision is correct, just to help people follow your logic, is because, hey, it's not a general government issue. And if people want to have contracts, they can have contracts of any way they want to. The problem is calling it marriage and deciding it's a federal agenda is the issue, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, there's so many other subjects. And I had a big, long exchange with a group the other day from another Midwestern area that they want to use the 14th Amendment in error and actually facilitate a greater preponderance of decisions going to the 14th Amendment. And they're saying this could happen with the 14th Amendment. I'm saying, you guys just stand on a sandy foundation. One of these days it's going to bite you. And so,
amen to that. And the general idea is that it's not federal purview at all. And the 14th Amendment was, in my opinion, manipulated in various ways that violate the checks and balances and violate the sovereignty of the 50 constitutional republics, right?
Correct.
And that's really what happened.
So, but the 14th Amendment is used as an excuse for violating all of these baseline principles that have a separation of a power. And you know, it's one thing that the general government is being completely having additional power heaped to it till it'll all be centralized. And that's the very definition of tyranny, the way the founding fathers believed of it. So yeah, this is disappointing from a moral basis. But like I say, you could say, well, I can call whatever my contract is. I can say it's a party contract or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, we seem to be willing to throw the traditional values under the bus, and using the 14th Amendment constantly undermines the whole foundation of the nation. So anyway,
at the end of the day, a male is a male, a female is a female, and marriage is God ordained between a man and a woman. And any perversion of that, ladies and gentlemen, literally reaps the whirlwind as we turn our back on God's law and God's declarations. It's not going to go well for us. So some are celebrating this thing. I'm saying we ought to be in sackcloth and ashes over this. I don't mean any harm to anybody who believes differently than me. I'm just telling you, when we call it same-sex marriage, that whole term is a lie. Same-sex and marriage don't apply. Marriage can procreate. Same-sex marriages cannot. And I know you'd say, well, we can make a man pregnant now. We can do. Okay, come on now, people. You're perverting God's agenda the more you talk. Stop. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, they told you that he was fine, that he's okay, but we're seeing more and more evidence that they had to treat him like a toddler. Hot Mike catches Biden and his handler basically treating Sleepy Joe like a toddler. It's fascinating. We don't know when this was actually taken. Was it really when he was president? Was it recent? We don't have context for it. But my whole point to bring it up is this is where the Democrats and even the Republicans, Mike Johnson knew that Biden wasn't fit to serve, but he said nothing. So I'm going to say that it's the Republican and Democrats. The deep state told us Joe was fine. Here's the proof they lied.
On stage. Yeah. Oh, okay. You're being wrapped by the tribes.
All right. So, okay, there you go. So my question is, who is this lady saying you're going to stay on stage? And he's like, oh, I am? I mean, I'd like to order around the president or the vice president, whatever you want, like that, doctor. The very strange. He doesn't even know where he's at. He doesn't even know if he's supposed to stay on stage or not. I mean, who's in charge around there? If they're telling him you're going to stay on stage and he's like, oh, I am? What about the real decisions of the country? Or what about him advising right now? He's kind of come out of the woodwork and he's advising the Democratic Party saying, hey, we just had some big wins. You haven't seen nothing yet. It's a coming. He doesn't even know where he's at, doctor. I mean, it's a short clip, but the proof is there, is it not?
Well, they're on pretty thin ice if they're putting all their hopes and dreams on a Joe Biden, kind of movement going on. Just as a little side note, I know this is a side note though, but I watch a lot of news feeds. I try to keep track of what's flowing around the country. I am seeing more and more and more news feeds that are trying to cast Donald Trump in the Biden funk.
Yeah, that he's old, that he doesn't know what's going on, that he's
Absolutely.
confusing and clueless. It's not even close to true.
No, but the thing is that you can see there's a web being woven that's trying to cast him in that same kind of debilitated state. And I find it fascinating how there's so many that so many of these, I don't know, ploys that keep getting played by the spin doctors, and you just have to sort through it. But you wonder how many people take the time to sort it. They just take it at face value. Like I thought we were going to talk a little bit, maybe we will in a moment, about the BBC and their spinning
Yeah,
of the
that's
web.
coming up. So the point is, we will, and I think Americans have a hard time following those nuances, as you wisely point out, Doctor. However, I think when you see short clips like that, and when you see headlines like I'm talking about, I think people really start to see the truth, right? Watch hot mic catches Biden's handler treating Sleepy Joe like a toddler. Okay, when you see that, I mean, I think it doesn't take much for the average person to go, wait a minute, why is this lady telling him you're going to stay on stage? And he's like, oh, I am? Okay, what? Okay, that's what you say to a 5-year-old. Trump or Biden should know if he's staying on the stage or not, or whatever. If somebody said that to me, I'd be like, no, listen, I'm supposed to not stay on the stage. I'm leaving. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's go over here and talk about this or whatever. All I'm saying is these short sound bites in many ways aren't good because I want people to dig into details. But in some cases, I think these short sound bites help the American people see what's really happening. And this is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this one is, without even having the whole bigger context, I think it tells pretty, straightforward story. He's not playing with the full deck.
Amen
So
to that.
anyway,
Now, your point is the BBC people, we talked about that last week, how they literally manipulated video evidence of Donald Trump, pretending he was promoting violence. They got caught. It was a lie. What I don't understand is why it took so long for this to happen. But the BBC director, I guess he's the past General Tim Davey, I think is how you say his name, and BBC News CEO Deborah Turnus both had to resign following the report the editors literally manipulated video. They doctored Trump's speech, making it sound like he incited violence before the speech. It was a flat-out lie. The resignations were announced after the Telegraph, you got to go to the foreign news, Doctor, revealed on October 2024 that, hey, they had misleading evidence about his speech. Anyway, an internal UK government report confirmed the misleading editing, stated that they had a panorama slice of clips that were edited together to create a false narrative, to falsely suggest that Trump called for violence when he literally called for a peaceful protest. When we get back, Dr. Bradley will break this down in more detail because this is serious. What I don't understand is why it took literally 4 years to make this happen. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
interlude, Sam was talking about this British news agency that sliced and diced the presentation that Trump made on January 20th, 2021, that made it look like he was an insurrectionist. The truth of the matter is, by the way, that nobody's been convicted of insurrection under any of the insurrection laws, and this didn't happen, and it was a complete fabrication. And it's kind of as egregious, in my opinion, as this new movement to AI. AI is, I mean, they can make anybody look like they're sane and make their voice sound like they're sane. And I think we've really got to be on our guard. And Ronald Reagan coined a term, trust but verify. My adage has always been distrust until verified. And so virtually every one of these things that comes out, I have to do some digging. And most people aren't willing to do that. But I think that that's going to become more and more and more a situation that's critical. I mean, we have instances, for example, where we have medical advice being given on the internet that sounds like a person that should know. We have legal advice that sounds like a person that should know. It's all created nonsense. And I just have to say it's AI Bravo Sierra most of the time when I see these things now. But part of the problem is I spoke with someone the other day that spent some time in the emergency room, and they got all the reports out of it. And they said, this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen. And they started going through their reports. They took the effort to get the reports and review them. And finally, it came down to that they were all AI generated. So there's just so many false spins being put on everything. This news thing is I think, a word to the wise to say distrust until verified. And it's cool that they finally got caught, but I think the U.S. news media, they had cameras rolling and recordings on when Trump was speaking, and somebody said, "Here's what's being put out in England. Isn't it amazing that the speech actually went this way?" And there could have been a
Well, in
correction.
the United States media too, and we need to dig into this further, really perpetuated that same kind of a narrative. Whether they used the exact footage or not, or created their own footage, that's a problem. I don't know. We need to back into the mainstream press and their coverage on a lot of this too. But I think they all committed fraud because look, it took 4 years for us to, almost 5 years for us to come up with this. And now these guys resign 5 years later. When are when are they going to have to, pay back the amount of money they got for 5 years? All I'm saying is that even the UK government report confirmed the misleading editing. And so we need to back into the United States side of those discussions, and we need to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law all these people involved. Before to the end of the hour, I want to highlight another article for Dr. Bradley to comment on. I think this is a sad tale in America for sure, and I got a different 100% 180-degree solution from Trump on this. Headline says, Trump has proposed introducing 50-year mortgage terms, attracting significant backlash. And you got to go, I wonder why. Well, because it's a clown show. That's why. The last thing we need are longer mortgages for people to pay just tremendous amount of interest. It's out of control. The FHA director, Bill Polt is the guy's name, confirmed that the administration effort wants to, put this plan in place. Critics argue that these extended mortgages could really cause problems here. They say the debt levels will just be through the roof. Some, like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, voiced concerns about financial burdens on homeowners. Supporters claim it could improve housing affordability. Details on the implementation and the timeline at this point remain unclear. Current households spend an average of 38+% of their income on mortgage payments. That's absolutely out of control and unsustainable, by the way. Trump is considering taking Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and turning them into public institutions. He regards the financial performance of these groups favorable, and he believes it's perfect time to do this. I couldn't disagree more, Dr. Bradley. What we need to do is open up a bunch of land in the West and get it back from the federal government controlling most of the land in the West so people could actually buy land at affordable costs, number one. Number two, we need to back off on all the mandated guidelines of home, ownership and build. Hey, we got zoning. We've got massive homeowners associations, HOA fees. We've got to where it's just absolutely unsustainable. We need to go the opposite direction. Decentralize, decrease costs and regulations, let interest rates regulate themselves. Private people could, bring a lot of loans to the table. Seller or for sale by owner or owner financed could make a big difference. An owner could make 5% interest or 4% interest and be delighted to get it. There's so many ways to go about this, but we're going about it the wrong way, keeping people in debt longer, having them pay tremendously more interest. It's a disaster. And what it really means is no one will be able to own homes for future generations if we allow this to stand. Dr. Bradley.
Well, the World Economic Forum has been promoting the idea that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And this is a move towards that. But you're a guy that's been in the mortgage business for a long time, and you know the nuances of this thing. But I remember 50-year mortgages for a period of time. They may still have them, maybe they don't. I don't know. But say 20, 25 years ago,
What year mortgages?
50-year mortgages, and young people were picking them up. But I thought, you know what, you guys are idiots. You're going to be 30 years old now, and you're getting in a house. and you won't even have it paid off until you're 80. I mean, come on, people.
Yeah, but let me
think about
explain
this.
the mentality for some of these people. They're just saying, look, I'm never going to own a house. So I can either, one, do one of these 50-year mortgages and have something nicer, or live in an apartment at somebody else's behest, or live in somewhere else at somebody else's behest. When you have two negative choices like that, people make a choice that at first sounds like, there's no common sense to it, but they're just like, hey, at least for the next 50 years or the next 20 years till I die, whatever the time frame be, I'll have a better quality of living in the meantime, and if I'm not going to own anything, what's the difference? To some degree, that's right when you give people no good options.
Yeah, right. It's like A, B, C, and D are all bad options. They're
That's
common
correct.
core kinds of options. But the thing is that you say, I fully support the getting the federal government being out of the landlord business, and they own a vast amount of property. They claim it anyway. They don't own it, and it's unconstitutional and all this kind of stuff. And that needs to be corrected. And by the way, that's how Andy Jackson got the United States out of debt to begin with. The first and only time the United States has been out of debt is by selling federal lands. But I would put a little stopgap in there. A little. It's got to be major. No foreign ownership. See, China could come in and buy up all that land and say, "Hey, I now own the United States," and that was not. I mean, foreign ownership was something they were concerned about clear back in the founding era, and that we've created an
Rightly so
environment.
then, and rightly so now, Doctor.
Absolutely. And so we would have to put some, caveats and protections in there so that it didn't all get bought up. And here's an issue. It's called stewardship, and it's a natural law issue. If you have a home, you have a responsibility to take care of it. You've got a family, you take care of them. You've got stewardship over that. And there are some people now, and the general government's one of them, and that is they claim ownership, but they're really bad stewards. They have a really crappy approach to handle all this vast, tracts of land that they have. So they do a poor job. And what actually happens if you have ownership is you recognize that, I take care of my forest, or I take care of my watershed, or whatever, because my children will inherit that. And
because I have to live in it.
That's right. And so there's a whole bunch of things that could be corrected if the suggestion that the general government get out of the landlord business, and it would make a great deal more land available, but again put some safeguards in there so that China doesn't pick it all up or something like that.
Yeah. So create a level playing field, create a situation that protects America, do so by law, then get the government out of the loan business entirely. Let interest rates fall where they may based on supply and demand and realism. Let Americans get enough land to where we can actually, buy land at reasonable costs. The reason land is cheaper in the Midwest and in the South is because they don't have all these, west of the Mississippi kind of scenarios where the government owns all the land. Look at the equal footing clauses and let's get, land in the hands of the American people. Let's decrease the mandates by government. I mean, you could do 3D printing, you could do manufactured homes, you could do home ownership could be very easy if we just had government create a level playing field and get out the way. And the sooner that happens, the better. Dr. Bradley's right that it needs to be done correctly. But I think if you can get government out of the way, so I support getting rid of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac at the government level. I reject the 50-year mortgage plan. I think that's a disaster. I think we need to go more towards 15 and 10-year mortgage plans, if at all, and let people not have compound interest. Let them have simple interest. And if you did that, then the people lending the money can get some interest, but it wouldn't be abusive usury. And hey, until we realize that is dishonest manipulation of money, fake money, the Federal Reserve at the core of all this, the inflation would go away, real prices, real value for value would take place, supply and demand would be king once again, not government manipulations or subsidizing, etc. These are the answers. Go back to the free market of the Founding Fathers, understand what they were concerned about and why. I mean, that's the solution, Doctor.
Free market, the two key words that you threw in there that could make all of those little nuanced things happen.
Amen. By the way, you can sign up for Dr. Bradley's weekly webinars Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Go to freedomsrisingsun.com to sign up and get your invite ticket, if you will. You can also basically check out his incredible collegiate series, To Preserve the Nation. It's all available at freedomsrisingsun.com. For Dr. Bradley, and I'm Sam Bushman. We love Liberty, ladies and gentlemen. We're syndicated by the Loving Liberty Networks, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.